it's me, Elsa from Frozen. So I got fired by Disney and kind of let myself go a little bit, but now I'm back as the Inequality Queen, talking to you about inequalities and their graphs. So here's a question. What did Snow White say every time the printer jammed? Someday my prince will come. Frozen. The first vocabulary term is an inequality, and that's when two statements are not equal. So you're going to have two expressions, and instead of having an equal sign in between them, you're going to have one of these symbols, and that's going to tell you which expression is less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to the other one. And when we graph these on the number line, here is what you're going to put at these specific values. And we'll get into this in a second. Just know if it's less than or greater than, it's going to be an open circle. If it's less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to, it's going to be a closed circle. So let's talk about how you graph inequalities. We're going to graph this inequality right here. And the first thing I want you to do is be able to say it. How do you read this? Well, in words, it's x is less than 4. So now we get into graphing it. First thing we ask ourselves, are you going to put an open or closed circle at 4? Well, since there's no equal sign underneath, you're going to put an open circle at 4. So we go to 4, we put an open circle. Done. Next, we just got to figure out which way to shade. Do we shade left or right? Well, we want all the numbers less than 4, which would be 3, 2, 1, 0. So we're going to shade to the left. Easy, right? If you can't remember that or you need a helpful hint, just know the inequality sign points in the direction you should shade. So here you see x is less than 4. So our inequality is pointing to the left, which means we should shade to the left. And this only works if your variable is on the left-hand side. So we have been doing that when we solve equations. We put our variable on the left and then our constants on the right. So anytime your variable is on the left and you solve it all the way out, your inequality sign is going to point the direction you should shade. How did Minnie Mouse save Mickey Mouse from drowning? Mouse-to-mouse resuscitation. Example time.
Okay, example 1 says graph the following inequality. First, how do we read this? What is it in words? It's x is greater than negative 2. So now we get into graphing it. First, are we going to put an open or a closed circle at negative 2? Well, there's no equal sign underneath, so it's going to be an open circle. So we go to negative 2, we put an open circle. Next, are we going to shade to the left or the right? Well, remember, it's all the numbers greater than negative 2. X is greater than negative 2. So all the numbers greater than negative 2 would be negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to shade to the right. And if you didn't know that, remember the inequality sign, since our variable is on the left, points in the direction we should shade. Part B, we're going to graph the following inequality. It doesn't look right. So what we need to do is make sure that our variable is on the left, just like we were doing up here. Since our variable is on the right, what we have to do is we're going to flip this inequality. And when you flip the inequality, you have to flip the number, the variable, and the sign. So instead of 3 is greater than or equal to x, we're going to write x is less than or equal to 3. You flip everything. Now we're ready to go. So how do I say this in words? We said it's x is less than or equal to 3. Perfect. So now we get into graphing it. First, open or closed circle at 3. Since there's an equal sign down here, we're going to put a closed circle. We're going to put a point at 3. So we go down to 3, put a closed circle. Next, are we going to shade to the left or the right? Well, since it's x is less than or equal to 3, we want all the numbers less than or equal to 3. So we want 2, 1, 0, negative 1, negative 2. So all these numbers to the left. And again, if you didn't know that, since we have our variable on the left now, you can see that the inequality symbol points in the direction we should shade.
Who's the funniest Disney character? That would be Rapunzel. You try.
Let's start with A. In words, this is x is greater than or equal to 2. And it's important because this is going to help us later. First, open or closed circle. Since we have an equal sign underneath our inequality symbol, we're going to put a closed circle. We're going to put a point at 2. So we go to 2, we put a closed circle. Next, are we going to shade to the left or right? Well, it's x is greater than or equal to 2. So it's all the numbers greater than or equal to 2. So 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to shade to the right. And again, if you didn't remember that, our inequality symbol points to the right since we have our variable on the left. Part B, something's not right. So what I have to do is I have to flip this. I have my variable on the right and I need it to be on the left. And since it's our only variable, we just flip everything in this inequality. We flip the y, the 5.5, and the inequality sign. So it's going to look something like this now. So now we can say this in words to help us graph later. This is actually going to read out y is less than or equal to 5.5. Now we can start graphing. Is it an open or closed circle? Since there's an equal sign under the inequality, it's going to be a closed circle, and we put that at 5.5. So we go to 5.5 would be halfway between 5 and 6. Done. Next, are we shading to the left or the right? Since we have our variable on the left, we can read the inequality sign, or you could just see that it's y is less than or equal to 5.5. So we're going to pick all the numbers less than or equal to 5.5. That would be 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So we're going to shade to the left. If you didn't know that, since we have our variable on the left now, you can see that the inequality symbol, again, points in the direction we should shade. Part C, we have z is less than -3 squared. Now, we have to simplify this side before we graph it. So what is -3, the quantity squared? That's 9. Now we're ready to go. So how does this read? In words, this is z is less than 9. So what we can do now is, since we have our variable on the left, we're ready to go. Let's graph. Open or closed circle? Well, at 9, since there's no equal sign under our inequality, it's going to be open circle at 9. And now that we have that, what we can do is we can decide which way do we have to shade, to the left or to the right. Well, since it's z is less than 9, we want all the numbers less than 9. 8, 7, 6, 5. We want all the numbers that way. So we're going to shade to the left. And again, if you didn't remember that, since we have our variable on the left, you just look at which way the inequality points, and we shade to the left. Here, again, we have to simplify this. Okay, so under our radical, we're going to add these two numbers together first. What is 4 plus 21? That's 25. And what is the square root of 25? That's 5. We're ready to go now. So we have x is greater than 5. Sweet. So now we get into graphing it. We're going to put an open or a closed circle at 5. Is there an equal sign underneath? No, there's no equal sign. So we're going to put an open circle at 5. So we go to 5, and we put an open circle. Next, are we going to shade to the left or the right? Two ways to do this. One would be to look at our inequality in words. X is greater than 5. So that means we're going to choose all the numbers greater than 5. 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're going to shade to the right. Or since we have our variable on the left, you can see that our inequality points to the right. So we're going to shade to the right. Okay, example 2 says write the inequality shown by the graph. So this time we're given a graph and we have to write the inequality. So here's how this works. We're going to start with everything we're given. Okay, we're not going to start with saying it in words because we want to get to that point. So what are we given? In this graph, we have an open circle at -2. Also, are we shading to the left or the right? It looks like we're shading to the right. Because it's an open circle, we know there's going to be no equal sign underneath the inequality. And because we're shading to the right is all the numbers greater than -2. So we are going to say in words, let's pick a variable, x. We're going to say x has to be greater than -2. And again, why is it not greater than or equal to? Because there's no shading in this circle. It's an open circle, so it's just greater than. So how do we write that as an inequality? X is greater than -2. Done.
What happens when Olaf throws a temper tantrum? He has a meltdown. You try.
Okay, again, we're given a graph and we have to write the inequality. So we start with what we're given. Are we given an open or a closed circle? Looks like a closed circle to me. So our inequality then is going to be greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. Next, are we shading to the left or right? We're shading to the left. So it's all the numbers less than or equal to this value right here. So since we're shading to the left, we know it's less than. And since it's a closed circle, it's less than or equal to. So now we say it in words. We're going to pick a variable, x. And we have to say x is less than or equal to. And then this value looks like 3.5 or 3.5. So how do we write that as an inequality? X is less than or equal to 3.5. Done. Example 3 says determine if the following numbers are solutions to the inequality. So here's our inequality. X is greater than or equal to -3. So this is actually pretty easy. You hope for this question on the test. All you have to do is plug in this value for X in our inequality. And then you just decide, is this inequality true? Is -4 greater than or equal to -3? Well, 4 is greater than 3, but -4 is actually less than -3. So we say this inequality is not true. Therefore, -4 is not a solution to the inequality. Let's plug in -3. So if I plug in -3 for x in this inequality, I get -3 is greater than or equal to -3. Is this true? Look at this guy down here. Greater than or equal to. Are these equal? Yes. Therefore, this is a solution to the inequality. -2. Let's find out if this is a solution to the inequality. So I take this, I plug it in for x in this inequality here, and now I determine, is this inequality true? Is -2 greater than or equal to -3? And again, 2 is less than 3, but -2 is actually greater than -3. It's farther to the right on the number line. Therefore, yes, this inequality is true, and that makes -2 a solution to the inequality. Is -1 a solution? Well, if -3 and -2 were solutions, then -1 is probably going to be a solution. So I plug in -1 for x in the inequality and judge, is this inequality true? Yes, -1 is greater than or equal to -3. Therefore, -1 is a solution to the inequality.
What's Tarzan's favorite Christmas carol? That would be Jungle Bells. You try.
Okay, we're doing the same thing. We're just plugging in these values for x in the inequality to determine if the inequality is true. And then if we simplify it and determine the inequality is true, we can say that this is a solution to the inequality. So we plug in 0 for x, and when we do, we get 0 is greater than 0 minus 2. Well, what is 0 minus 2? We have to simplify this. 0 minus 2 is going to be -2. So is 0 greater than -2? Yes, it is. Because this inequality is true, that means 0 is a solution to the inequality. Is 1 a solution? Well, we take 1, we plug it in for x in this inequality. And now, what is 1 minus 2? We need to simplify this. 1 minus 2 gives you -1. Is 0 greater than -1? Yes, it is. Therefore, 1 is a solution to the inequality. What about 2? Let's plug in 2. If I plug in 2 and simplify this, 2 minus 2 gives me 0. Now, is 0 greater than 0? Well, 0 is greater than or equal to 0, but it's not greater than 0. They're the same. Therefore, this is not a solution to the inequality. 2 is not a solution to the inequality, because when I plug in 2, I get 0 is greater than 0. What about 3? I plug in 3 to the inequality. What's 3 minus 2? That's 1. Now, is 0 greater than 1? No, it is not. Therefore, 3 is not a solution to the inequality. Let's do example 4. So this says, define a variable and write a model for each situation. So it says a theater can hold at most 220 people. So what I want to do is define a variable first. A theater can hold at most 220 people. So let's make our variable based on the number of people. So we'll say P is going to be the number of people in the theater. Now we need to write our inequality. So what do we know? We know the theater can hold at most 220 people. That means the most it can hold is 220 people. It can hold 220 people or less than 220 people. So we say P has to be less than or equal to 220 because we can hold less than 220 and we can hold 220, but we can't hold any more. So P has to be less than or equal to 220. Let's try part B. It says you must be at least 16 to get a driver's license. So we first define our variable. You must be at least 16. So maybe our age is A. Now we need to write our inequality. So it says you must be at least 16. That means the least amount your age could be is 16, but you could be more than 16, right? You could be 17, 18, 19 and get a driver's license. Therefore, we need our age to be greater than or equal to 16.
Why did Mickey go to outer space? To find Pluto! You try.
Okay, so first, what we have to do, we have to define our variable. So in this case, it says a person can eat no more than 6 saltine crackers in a minute. So no more than 6 saltine crackers. So we're talking about saltine crackers. So let's say C represents the number of saltine crackers eaten in a minute. Now we're going to write our inequality. So it says a person can eat no more than 6 saltine crackers. So the most they could eat then would be 6 saltine crackers. So if C is the number of saltine crackers you can eat in a minute, then it's no more than, so the greatest it could be would be 6. So C would have to be less than or equal to 6. Down here, Steph Curry makes more than $34 million each year. So define our variable. More than $34 million in a year. Dollars is probably what we're talking about. So we're going to say M is the amount of money earned by Steph Curry, or D is the number of dollars, either way. Next, you're going to write your inequality. Steph Curry makes more than $34 million a year. So more than. It has to be more than this. It cannot be equal. Therefore, the amount of money Steph Curry makes in a year, M, has to be more than or greater than 34 million.